Welcome to the Daily Globe. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. On September 11, 2025, the Supreme Court overturned President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs, ending a contentious era in U.S. trade policy. The decision sends shockwaves through Washington and the world, reshaping commerce and impacting every American family. What began as Trump's Liberation Day tariffs, meant to protect American industries, sparked fierce debate, legal battles, and rising consumer prices. Now, with the policy struck down, urgent questions loom about America's economic future. The story began on April 2, 2025, a day that would soon be etched into the annals of American economic history. It started like any other spring morning in Washington, D.C., but by midday, the nation and the world was bracing for a seismic shift in global trade. That afternoon, President Trump stood at the White House podium and announced the Liberation Day tariffs, a sweeping and radical overhaul of U.S. trade policy. The announcement was delivered with characteristic bravado, promising to put America first and to reclaim what he called economic sovereignty. The new tariffs were broad and aggressive. Nearly all foreign countries faced steep new import taxes, ranging from 15% on goods from the European Union, impacting everything from luxury cars to French wine and Italian cheese, to a staggering 50% on imports from India, which sent shockwaves through industries reliant on Indian textiles, pharmaceuticals, and technology. The tariffs didn't stop there. China, Canada, and Mexico, America's largest trading partners, were hit with reciprocal tariffs, igniting immediate fears of a global trade war and retaliation. The Trump administration justified these sweeping measures by invoking the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA. They argued that the president had the authority to impose such tariffs during a declared national emergency, citing threats to the U.S. economy and national security. But critics, including legal scholars and business leaders, quickly pushed back. They argued that IEPA was never intended to grant the president unilateral power to tax imports, and warned that this move set a dangerous precedent for executive overreach. The Liberation Day tariffs marked the highest import taxes since the infamous Smoot-Hawley Act of the 1930s, a period remembered for deepening the Great Depression. For decades, the U.S. had steadily lowered trade barriers, fostering global commerce and economic growth. Now, that era seemed to be ending. Businesses across the country scrambled to adapt. Manufacturers faced sudden cost increases, retailers struggled with empty shelves, and small business owners worried about their survival as supply chains unraveled almost overnight. The economic shockwave was immediate and profound. Stock markets tumbled, consumer prices soared, and lawsuits challenging the tariffs flooded the courts. The Liberation Day tariffs quickly became the center of a fierce legal and political battle, with the nation's economic future hanging in the balance. Today's Supreme Court decision finally brings closure to this turbulent chapter, but the legacy of Liberation Day will shape American trade policy for years to come. Legal challenges to the tariffs began almost immediately, questioning whether the president could impose such taxes under IEPA. In May 2025, the U.S. Court of International Trade ruled the tariffs illegal, finding the president lacked authority to impose them. The Federal Circuit upheld this decision, stating only Congress can levy taxes. Recognizing the stakes, the court delayed enforcement to allow a Supreme Court appeal. The administration warned of financial chaos if forced to refund billions in collected tariffs. The Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, fast-tracking arguments due to its national importance. The legal battle became a test of constitutional limits on presidential power. Today's ruling affirms those limits, ending the legal saga. The Liberation Day tariffs generated truly staggering revenue. By late August, the U.S. government had collected an unprecedented $72 billion, a sum that dwarfed previous tariff collections in American history. This windfall poured into federal coffers at a pace few could have predicted, reshaping the government's short-term financial outlook almost overnight. In July alone, the government raked in $30 billion, a single-month record that sent shockwaves through financial markets and policy circles alike. But this windfall came with a catch. Treasury officials quickly warned that if the tariffs were overturned, the government could be on the hook to refund as much as $1 trillion to importers and businesses, a liability so massive it threatened to destabilize the entire federal budget. Such a refund would be a catastrophic blow to federal finances, potentially forcing deep budget cuts, new borrowing, or even emergency measures to keep government operations afloat. For American families, the impact was immediate and personal. The tariffs acted as a hidden tax, quietly raising the cost of everyday goods and services. By 2025, the average household was paying an extra $1,304 each year. Money that could have gone to groceries, rent, or savings, now lost to higher prices. Prices surged across the board, from electronics and appliances to food staples and clothing, putting a strain on budgets nationwide and forcing many families to make tough choices. The tariffs themselves were a complex patchwork: 15% on goods from the European Union, a staggering 50% on imports from India, and a maze of other rates for different countries. Separate duties applied to imports from China, Canada, and Mexico, each with their own rules and exceptions, making the system nearly impossible to navigate. This complexity created chaos for businesses and consumers alike, as companies struggled to calculate costs and shoppers faced unpredictable price hikes. The looming threat of a $1 trillion refund liability drove the administration to mount a fierce legal defense, determined to protect the government's newfound revenue. When the Supreme Court finally weighed in, the stakes could not have been higher, with the nation's financial stability hanging in the balance. Now, with the court's decision handed down, the government faces the daunting task of unwinding a tangled web of financial obligations, legal challenges, and economic fallout. The economic impact of these tariffs, and the uncertainty they unleashed, will be felt by American families, businesses, and the government for years to come. The tariffs forced businesses to choose between absorbing higher costs or passing them to consumers, leading to widespread price hikes. The average household paid over $1,300 more in 2025, hitting lower-income families hardest. While the tariffs generated billions for the Treasury, that revenue was always at risk. Now it must be refunded. The uncertainty stifled investment as companies delayed expansion and reconfigured supply chains to avoid tariffs. The legal battle's outcome has transformed a revenue stream into a massive liability. The disruption chilled economic activity long before the final court ruling. With the tariffs gone, businesses and consumers face a new landscape, one shaped by both relief and lingering uncertainty. The nation must now navigate the fallout. The tariffs triggered a global trade war as countries retaliated with their own duties on American goods. Long-standing alliances were strained, and global supply chains thrown into chaos. Companies scrambled to relocate production, incurring massive costs and inefficiencies. Developing nations, especially those hit with steep tariffs, faced economic setbacks and uncertainty. America's reputation as a champion of global trade was damaged, replaced by unpredictability and risk. The Supreme Court's decision offers hope for normalization. Retaliatory tariffs may be lifted and trust slowly rebuilt. Yet the scars of this trade war will not heal overnight. The world watches to see if the U.S. returns to stable, collaborative trade leadership. The next moves will shape global commerce for years. Top officials warned of economic catastrophe if the tariffs were overturned, citing the massive refund liability. President Trump defended the policy as vital to his America First agenda, framing the legal battle as a fight for economic sovereignty. Legal experts, however, focused on constitutional limits, arguing that if the president exceeded his authority, refunds were inevitable. Trade attorneys advised clients to prepare for complex refund processes, with some businesses even selling their potential claims. The legal debate centered on presidential power, not economic wisdom. The Supreme Court's decision now forces the government to confront the consequences. The nation's legal and financial systems brace for the aftermath. With the Supreme Court's ruling now public, the government faces an unprecedented challenge, refunding up to $1 trillion in tariffs collected over the past years. This is a historic moment, one that will test the agility and coordination of federal agencies and lawmakers alike. The sheer scale of the refund is staggering, and the logistics are daunting. Never before has the government attempted a payout of this magnitude, and every step must be carefully planned to ensure fairness and accuracy. The Treasury Department and Congress must now work hand in hand, designing a system to distribute funds efficiently to thousands of affected businesses. This will require new legislation, detailed guidelines, and a transparent process to prevent fraud and confusion. Teams of officials will be tasked with reviewing claims, verifying documentation, and overseeing the flow of money back into the economy. For companies, the announcement is both a relief and a call to action. Businesses are urged to gather invoices, shipping records, and payment receipts to support their refund claims. Accountants and legal teams will be working overtime, as the refund process could dramatically reshape corporate finances and future planning. The end of tariffs brings immediate relief to importers and manufacturers. Lower import costs mean more affordable raw materials and components, which can spark renewed investment and expansion. American exporters, too, may find new opportunities as foreign markets reopen and retaliatory barriers begin to fall. On the world stage, diplomats will work to repair relationships strained by years of trade disputes. Negotiations will focus on removing retaliatory tariffs and rebuilding trust with key partners, paving the way for smoother international commerce and cooperation. For consumers, the changes will be gradual but noticeable. As supply chains adjust and competition returns, shoppers should see prices drop on everyday goods, from groceries to electronics. Retailers will pass on savings as they compete for customers in a revitalized market. The economic stimulus from lifted tariffs won't reach every household overnight. It will take time for the benefits to filter through the economy as businesses reinvest and consumers adjust to new price levels. Economists will be watching closely, tracking the impact on jobs, wages, and growth. The process will be slow, unfolding over months and even years, but the effects will ripple outward, touching industries, communities, and families across the nation. As the dust settles, America enters a new phase, one filled with both opportunity and challenge, as the nation adapts to a transformed economic landscape and looks ahead to the future. The Supreme Court's decision is a defining moment, reaffirming Congress's authority to tax and setting a precedent for presidential limits. The ruling ends a controversial policy, but the economic and legal implications will unfold for years. Businesses gain stability, consumers anticipate relief, and the world hopes for renewed cooperation. The challenge now is managing historic refunds and rebuilding global trust. This is not just the end of a trade war, it's the start of a new chapter in America's economic story. Watch Congress and Treasury as they navigate the refund process and its impact on the budget. Monitor diplomatic efforts to restore alliances and lift retaliatory tariffs. The path ahead is complex, but the nation moves forward toward a different economic future.